There is a plant growing in the shadow of your garden wall right now, possibly beneath the oak tree at the end of your street, almost certainly in the forest you last walked through without thinking. It has 3 heart-shaped leaves, folded slightly at the center like hands in quiet prayer. It tastes unmistakably of lemon. It has been eaten on every inhabited continent, and there is no common name for it on any supermarket shelf. The plant is oxalis, wood sorrel in its most common English form, not to be confused with common sorrel, which is a different genus entirely, though the confusion itself is instructive. When a plant acquires too many names, too many regional identities, too many quiet presences across too many cultures, it becomes difficult to track, difficult to own. And what cannot be owned has a way of disappearing from official records while continuing to grow undisturbed in every crack and clearing it has always inhabited. This is the story of a plant that survived everything, and the story of how we learned to stop seeing it. This is Ancient Food Files, a channel that keeps the record of what has been misplaced, reclassified, or quietly set aside by the systems that decide what counts as food, not by conspiracy, by convenience, by the slow logic of industrial scale, which cannot accommodate what it cannot standardize. If you are here, something brought you to the margins of the official story. Stay. Subscribe if you believe that preservation matters, not just of seeds and soil, but of knowledge itself. Oxalis aceticella. The species name is itself a kind of description. Aceticella, little vinegar plant. The sourness comes from oxalic acid, the same compound that gives rhubarb its bite, that appears in spinach and almonds and dozens of plants that humans have eaten without alarm for thousands of years. In the quantities found in a handful of wood sorrel leaves, it is harmless. In the quantities found in a meal of it eaten daily for months, perhaps less so. But this is true of almost every food ever gathered, and it was never used as a reason to stop eating any of them. That reasoning came later. It came with an agenda attached. The plant itself is delicate in appearance only. Low-growing, clover-like, it spreads through woodland floors and hedgerow bases in dense, soft mats of green. The leaves close at night, and in strong sunlight, folding inward as though resting. The flowers are small, white with faint violet veining, or in some species of vivid yellow, appearing in early spring before most garden plants have stirred. The stem, when bitten, releases a clean, cold sharpness, a brightness, something that wakes the mouth the way citrus does, but quieter. It is, in every measurable way, a food. It has always been a food. The Celts gathered it. Early Irish manuscripts describe the foods of the forest months, the lean months between stored grain and the first cultivated harvest, when people moved into the tree line and ate what the woodland offered. Oxalis was among them. In Ireland, it carried the name seamsog. It was eaten fresh, added to broths, and used to sharpen the blandness of oat porridge. The sourness was not incidental. It was the point. The body, after winter, craved it. Across the Atlantic, the Haudenosaunee, known in colonial records as the Iroquois, gathered wood sorrel during spring and early summer. The Ojibwe chewed the stems on long journeys to stimulate saliva in the heat and manage thirst. The Cherokee used it for fever, for mouth sores, and as a green to settle the stomach after illness. These were not separate discoveries. They were the same discovery, made independently across centuries by people who lived close enough to the ground to notice. In southern Africa, species of oxalis, nearly 900 in the genus, were eaten by the Khoikhoi and San peoples. They recognized the sourness as a signal of the plant's safety and value. Their phrase for it translated roughly as the sour thing that the soil gives freely. That phrasing matters because the recognition that some foods require no cultivation, no permission, and no transaction would later become inconvenient. Wood sorrel is not a specialist. That is both its strength and the source of its disappearance. It grows in boreal forests and Mediterranean scrubland, beneath temperate rainforest canopy and across the semi-arid slopes of the South African Karoo. It appears in the Andes at altitude and at sea level in the English countryside. It tolerates shade that would kill most edible plants. It grows in acidic soil, clay, roadside margins, and disturbed ground. And once established, it spreads relentlessly, through seed, through rhizomes, and through tiny bulbils that cling to soil on boots, wheels, and birds. Each small bulb left in the soil generates another plant. The ground remembers. This is resilience, not invincibility, but patience. Yet in the 19th century, something changed. The Enclosure Acts in Britain removed common land. The hedgerows and forest edges where gathered foods had long supplemented rural diets. To forage became, legally, theft. At the same time, the emerging food industry required crops that could be transported, stored, and sold. Wood sorrel wilts within hours of picking. Its flavor fades quickly once the leaf is removed from the root. It cannot be shipped. It cannot be warehoused. So it was not banned. It was simply made irrelevant. Left behind in hedgerows while the rest of the food system moved indoors, into glasshouses, factories, and cans. Modern nutritional analysis quietly confirms what traditional cultures already knew. Oxalis leaves contain significant vitamin C, often between 50 and 80 milligrams per 100 grams, comparable to orange juice and higher than many cultivated greens. They contain iron, calcium, and potassium in amounts rivaling spinach. Studies of communities in the western Himalayas have documented Oxalis corniculata as a consistent part of mountain diets where supply chains never fully reached. These populations showed no harmful effects from oxalic acid and, in several cases, lower rates of iron deficiency anemia. So the plant remained what it had always been, a small, persistent food. What disappeared was something else, the habit of recognizing it. In the generations after the Irish famine, many migrants carried with them a quiet decision. They would not teach their children the foods they had been forced to eat in the worst years. Wild greens were not forgotten by accident. They were set aside intentionally. And so the fourth generation walked past wood sorrel growing beside the garden fence and saw only a weed. But the plant never left. It still grows in disturbed soil after floods and droughts. It survives where lettuce fails and spinach struggles. It appears in the margins, and in a changing climate, the margins are expanding. 3 heart-shaped leaves, a clean, bright taste when the stem is broken. A food that requires no purchase, no permission, and no supply chain. It grows in the shade. It closes at night. It waits. And sometimes the only thing required to rediscover it is the decision to look down.